Welcome to Centerstage. I'm Celeste Kelley. As we begin our program this evening, I'd like you to ask yourself a few questions, some of the questions that we're going to be talking about during our program tonight. The questions go like this. To what extent does your business, does your family support Peoria? What do I mean? I mean, how much of your hard-earned money do you spend right here in Peoria? Some? A little? None? Do you spend enough is the most important question. During our program tonight, I'm going to be talking with Becky Littlefield from the Peoria Chamber of Commerce, who is their new Director of Communications and Development, and I welcome you to Centerstage, Becky. And across from me, I'm also going to be talking with Eugene Swager, who is with Philip Swager here in Peoria, a businessman. Most of you know who both of these people are. The Peoria Chamber of Commerce, Becky, is about to conduct a new campaign, an awareness campaign as I understand it, that's aimed not only at individuals but also at businesses in two different phases to make people very much aware of the importance of spending dollars right here in Peoria. My first question to you is, how can you tell people where to spend their hard-earned money?
Well, it's easy, Celeste, and I think we can base it on sort of our nation's history. You know, it used to be long ago that communities developed because people were dependent on each other. They survived by trading their skills or their products with each other, and that was what a community was all about, the interdependence of each function or each product that that community had, and that's how they survived. So if we're dependent
on each other here in Peoria, we will buy from each other. We will spend our money here. Is that what you're saying?
That's a part of it. I think what happened, though, during the industrial component of our nation's history is that we became dependent on big companies that did not trade within our community. Big companies that became residents of our community but made a product or service that they marketed outside our community.
But doesn't that export dollar bring money still back into the community, maybe even more money?
Well, it does, but it doesn't make the community interdependent on itself. It makes the community dependent on something or someone else.
Okay, now let me ask you that based on all of what you've just said. Are you suggesting that people spend their money only in Peoria? That I go nowhere else to buy anything?
No, certainly not. I think that would be very unrealistic to suggest such a thing. People act when it's within their own best interest, and what we would like people to understand is that it is in their own best interest to trade and do business and do commerce with the people with whom they live and work right here in the Peoria area. And there are many reasons why it's in their own best interest. One of them is because by increasing this interdependency, we're going to make our community stronger. We're going to have more jobs available, we're going to have a stronger tax base, we're going to have a healthy retail community, and the people that live and work here are going to have things to live and work for.
Jean, you're obviously here because I asked you to come, and you were willing to come. What made you willing to come on television and talk about Try Our Peoria Area First?
Well, I guess the primary reason is because I believe that Peoria is a great place in which to live.
What's so great about it, in your estimation?
Well, you know, I have a very simple picture, I guess, that I look at, and I like to maybe go up in the air a little bit in a little old balloon and look down and see what you can see. And we have, as Becky has indicated, a very much a great community that is really depends one upon the other. You know, in that little balloon that you go up there, 1,000 feet or wherever else it is, you look down here and you see this beautiful little community along the riverfront. You see the highways, but more importantly, what you see, in my judgment, is all that it takes to make a community. We can look at, well, we're sitting here at Bradley University, if you will, and that's certainly an important part of this community.
A community is made up of people. Which goes back to what you were saying. If the community is going to survive, those people need to be interdependent.
That's right.
Is that your basis for this whole campaign?
That's what I personally believe, and that is the basis of the campaign the Chamber is undertaking.
Okay, what about goals that you have established within this campaign? Long-term, short-term? Can you talk about some of those?
Sure. Our short-term goal is to raise the level of awareness amongst our citizens as to the importance of investing in your own community. And we very carefully selected what this campaign would be, and that's why we ended up with Try Your Peoria Area First. We believe that anybody who is going to consume a product or service has the right to get the very best value they possibly can for the money that they're going to spend. But what we want those consumers to do is to give these Peoria area businesses and services a chance to be competitive. Frequently, we look outside our community and assume that what is outside our community has got to be better just because it's outside. The pro from Dover concept, you know, the person that comes from somewhere else and tells us what to do. But we believe that we have experts right here in Peoria.
Okay, I suppose the question that logically comes to my mind from that is, are Peoria area businesses competitive? Do they offer top-notch quality products and services at a competitive rate so that your business, Gene, can go to any place in Peoria for your supplies, or the Chamber of Commerce, or Channel 47 for that matter? Are we competitive?
I think that the answer to that is not just a absolutely yes. I think that there's a practical one. My business happens to be architecture, a service. And I'm one who believes that you've got to have the talents and the experiences before you can just expect people to use you.
Well, how do you get talents and experiences if you don't use them?
Well, I think it's by a growth process. Fortunately, this community over the years, as far as our firm has been concerned, has used us. There have been times when we've been highly disappointed, certainly, that they've outsourced, if you will, for our services elsewhere.
Does that seems to me by your reaction that mildly disappointed was hardly the word. Outsourcing is a source of, is a problem with you?
Well, I think that that's a problem with everybody within any given community. You know, there's an old saying, I guess, that you got to be 100 miles away from home to be an expert at times, and that's not unlike what happens to a lot of people who are put on committees to make selections for talents or others. They say, hey, I saw this great structure in New York City and I think that guy's great, and so away they go, you know. But the reality is that you can have both. You can sometimes mix the two and bring it back home, because everybody doesn't have the same experiences and talents. And I think that importantly is that the owner, the client, and the final analysis gets the best. And so sometimes you have to mix the talents from outsourcing with the local, and that's very practical.
Do you think that the majority of businesses in Peoria are getting a fair shake right now? Are they being used enough by other businesses and other people in this community?
Well, if we felt they were, we probably wouldn't be mounting such a campaign, even though the first portion of it is designed to impact on the retail community during the Christmas shopping season. That is only the first arm of the Try Your Peoria Area First campaign, which was initiated by our president of the chamber, Phil Carlson, about 3 months ago. The idea and concept came up and was developed by the board. Another very important part of that campaign is the Source Peoria Business to Business Expo, which the Chamber will be sponsoring in February. And that will give an opportunity for Peoria businesses like Gene's to introduce themselves to other Peoria businesses who might have need of their goods or services.
Okay, let's stop there. You've brought up an awful lot of different issues. Let's talk about outsourcing, if we can, for a moment. I think we all know that there are a number of businesses in this community who have taken some heat for their outsourcing practices. Methodist Medical Center, for one, has an out-of-town ad agency. I'm sure the people at Methodist think that they have some very sound and legitimate reasons. I'm also not 100% sure, but would guess that there are a number of ad agencies in Peoria who would have given their eye teeth for that job, and who think also that they're quite capable of doing that. Are there other examples of outsourcing that, you know, first of all, I guess before I ask if there are other examples, I should ask if you think that that's harmful to this community?
You want to respond first?
Well, I think from a standpoint of again, based upon talents and experiences, and I certainly cannot judge what Methodist Hospital has done or others, but I think that there's a practical aspect to this whole thing. For example, take a Caterpillar, who many employees are being let go because Caterpillar has had to find a lower cost for some product, and they have to go to an outsourcing process.
So there are times when outsourcing is legitimate.
I think that's correct. I think that's correct.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. As we said, we feel that the consumer, be it a business or an individual consumer, ought to get the very best value that they can for their dollar.
Okay.
But I think too often outsourcing is done without consulting or really finding out what's available in this community. The Methodist Medical Center is a perfect example. We have a number of very credible and very talented advertising agencies in this community. Like you, I'm certain that Methodist has a very good, or what they believe is a sound reason for selecting an out-of-town agency. However, the business that goes through that out-of-town agency represents a great deal of money.
That Peoria is losing?
Could be having circulated within our economy. Okay. Money in the production of advertising, money in the production of the services that agency is providing, and jobs. That agency probably has a couple people working on staff because of the Methodist account.
I think we all know basic economics that tells us that for every dollar spent wherever it is spent, there's a multiplier effect. More jobs, more product, more income, more money being spent. When you look at the subject of outsourcing, something is not gelling in my mind. On one hand, I hear you saying that there are times when it is legitimate, that there are also times when you wish people would look here before they jump out of town. If a Methodist, for example, and I'm not picking on Methodist Hospital, I'm simply using them as an example, if a Methodist hospital had tried an ad agency in Peoria and then they decided that someplace else was better, so they went with that. Maybe they got a better price, or maybe they got more services. Can you abide by that? Do you think that's okay, even though there's a large chunk of money? Or is there a middle ground that you want people to look for?
Well, I don't think we would have any choice but to abide by that decision if all the resources had been checked and all the research had been done and the decision had been made on the basis of economics and expediency.
Okay. Do you think outsourcing, both of you now, do you think outsourcing is a common problem? And when I say problem, I mean the instances of outsourcing that you think perhaps are not legitimate.
Well, I think that I think one of the things that this whole program brings to the chambers brings to mind is the fact that all of us need to really look at what this community is and what it takes to keep it going.
Okay, tell us, what is this community?
Well,
what does it take to keep us going?
Again, from that little balloon that I was in a minute ago, you have to look at it, in my judgment, as a whole fabric, and it's little. You have to weave to build a community an awfully lot of specialty kinds of people within that community, industry, business, the whole bit. And I think that once you have built that and understand it, then you begin to say, the first place I've got to do is going back like the settlers did and said, I got to help John buy whatever he's got so that I can continue to do my thing, so that we together can have schools and churches and symphonies and all the rest that makes up this great community we're in. We can't be individuals. We have to think first at home, but then to also reckon with the fact that the best is what we want as a product, and the competition is always good for us.
All right, let me ask you a question. Do you think that that whole scene, which is a very lovely scene, is happening here in Peoria? Is that a Peoria reality?
Becky, I think, touched on it maybe just a little bit earlier in saying that I think maybe we've had a new awakening or need a new awakening, and this whole program brings us back into focus. We certainly have all kind of set back and felt, well, we're such an insignificant part of a great community, but Caterpillar is the one that is the all-important entity. And I think that many people got confused by that issue. George Schaefer or others today will tell you, don't plan just on us, you know, bring in these other people and let's make this a good community that's made up of many parts.
Okay, you still didn't answer my question, though, about whether or not you thought that Peoria really is that little village that you, or little community that you described a moment ago.
I think it is a little more than the little village, but I think it is a great community that has so many attributes that need our support, And I guess getting right back to the point of buy or try Peoria, I think we have to look at those people who make up Peoria and make sure they're committed to serve this community also, not just because they want to come in and take away.
Can we make buy Peoria first, try Peoria first a reality before everyone has thoroughly examined their perception of this community and their perception of their role in this community?
Well, I think so, Celeste. The fact is, this is where we all live and work. You know, that's the fact. Regardless of what one's perception is of Peoria, whether you think it is in fact a little utopia or whether you think it's the deadliest place you can imagine and you wish you weren't stuck here, the fact is this is where we all live and work and survive, and it's to our own best interest really to make it the best we possibly can make it.
Okay, that brings me to something a little earlier than I had planned, but to what I see is something real important to talk about here, and that is loyalty. Whether I think I'm stuck in Peoria or whether I'm happily living here, as you said, may be a moot question. The fact is I am living here and I am working here. To what extent am I obligated to make this a better place? Not just because I want to, or wouldn't that be a fun thing to do, or I want to get my name on Becky Littlefield's committee. But no, thank you. But because I am obligated as a citizen of this community. Are we obligated?
I don't like to use that word. I think the word obligation has a very negative connotation.
Why? What makes it negative?
Because it seems like it's something you should do even though it's not good for you. It's something you got to do. It's something you have to take, like cough medicine. I don't feel that way. Gene and I perhaps are a little naive in our commitment to this community. We both lived here a very long time, and we both believe it's really a pretty darn good place to live. But I hate to use the word obligation.
Okay, look at
it's
obligation.
It's like being obligated to jog or obligated to do 50 sit-ups a day.
All right. A sense of duty, then. Replace it with that.
No, even that sounds awful puritanical to me. I find that if I invest myself in something, I feel good about that.
Okay. If I don't have to be obligated, if I don't have to feel obligated to help Peoria, if I don't have a duty because I live here to help Peoria, and I like shopping at Oakbrook, what's going to keep me here in Peoria?
Well, let me tell you something. The economics of the situation could well keep you in Peoria. And the reason is this. Every time you go up to Oakbrook to shop, there are several factors that you may not factor into that. One of them is it takes 3 hours of your time, 2.5 hours of your time to get there. It takes several gallons of gas to get there. Now, you have to add all those costs to your purchase. It takes you 2.5 hours to get back home. But let's talk about something even more important. You're going to pay for a purchase and pay sales tax to a community you don't even live in. You're going to pay 2-3 cents on every dollar that you buy to help Oakbrook have better schools and better roads and a civic center and public utilities and all those kinds of things. Now, why would you want to do that? What if Oakbrook sent you a letter and said, Celeste, I'd like 3 cents out of every dollar this next month. Would you please mail it up to Oakbrook? Would you do that?
Probably not.
Then why go up there to spend it?
Okay,
let me
go
pick
ahead,
up
Gene.
on this obligation thing. Becky thought that was maybe a little strong term, but let's look at this community for a minute, and I suppose as an architect, I think let's design it, and let's put everything together that we need to make this community. Those schools, those churches, those libraries, those everything else, those symphonies, those operas, whatever it takes. The Bradley University, you know, 2 big drives on right now that. Certainly United Way Drive, $4 million. Bradley University, $26 million, and these kinds of things. Yes, I think there's an obligation to people to think local, because we should also commit to supporting local. And I think it isn't just the matter of saying, well, there's a good store down there, let's go out and patronize it. Let's also expect the store, or the people within that store, to put back in, because I think that's what makes a society.
All right. You bring up a point that I want to hear both of you talk about. I agree with you about people's sense of obligation. But so many times I hear people talk about going to Oakbrook or going someplace else shopping or going someplace on a business trip out of Peoria. And they come back and they're all excited and they're invigorated and they've been to this place where they've gone shopping and people really want them in their stores and they've bent over backwards to help them, and boy, I'm glad you're my customer and come again and all of that. or they do business, and business is booming and people are excited and they're happy, and then they come back to Peoria and they go, man, what a come down. Is that attitude, is that reality, or what is it, and what do we do with it? If we want people to buy here, how do we get over that? That's bad, I would think.
Now that's competition, and that's what sharpens us.
Ah.
I think that's the thing that
So it's not bad for people to go away and come back with that.
I think all of us have to have those experiences so that we can compare. But I think, as Becky suggests, we ought to try locally first, and then if we say, you know, those guys really don't want us, then maybe we don't deserve it. But if they do want us, they're going to be sharper. And I think, you know, we've got the big yellow bird around here in Caterpillar, and we've seen what Komatsu's done to them, and we know that they've got to sharpen up. And we know that we probably, you know, been too giving with regard to its easy way of life around here, a setback, it'll all happen.
So you're saying that the way to sharpen Peoria up, if we're dissatisfied, which maybe we better establish whether or not we are we dissatisfied with service here in Peoria in terms of retail or business experience when purchasing?
You hit upon a sore point, and one that's come up many times in our steering committee meetings, and that is the fact that perhaps retailers too have become somewhat complacent, and service providers have become complacent because they felt that, yeah, I can just sit here and people are going to stream through my doors. Now we find that retailers are saying they too feel a responsibility to this, that they understand that they must give the service, they must make their patrons feel welcome, they must try to bend over backwards to fulfill those needs and be competitive price-wise and make sure they've got in stock what needs to be in stock. They have to give at least 50% in this effort. But no matter how service-oriented they are, or how much merchandise they have, or how good their prices are, unless Peorians try their Peoria area first, it's all for naught. So you see, we can't have one without the other. Now I agree that if you say to yourself, by Georges, she's right about this, or he's right about this, or they're right, and I'm going to march right out there and I'm going to buy a dress here in Peoria, and you walk through the door of the store and they don't have the time of day for you, then I say, boy, go off to Oakbrook with my blessing. They deserve it.
Go off to Oakbrook with my blessing, or go up to the manager in whatever the store is and say, wait a minute.
Step number one.
That would be the nicest thing to do. But I wouldn't blame you if you didn't do that. You see what I mean? I mean, the stores have an obligation. The businesses have an obligation. The services have an obligation to be the best they can be.
I want to go back to what you said at the very beginning of this program when you were talking about interdependence. I think that comes into play here again. If we're interdependent on one another in this community, is it up to us to, instead of running away to another community to live where it may be more pleasant right now, where it may be economically a little brighter, or maybe is our obligation to stay here and help make this a better place to be?
Of course, I feel the latter. I think our obligation is to stay here.
Is that part of the campaign, though?
Perhaps not spoken, or maybe not at this point spoken, but I would have to speak for myself, I guess, in that way. And yeah, it is a part of my personal goal.
You're born and raised in Peoria, Becky. What keeps you in Peoria?
Well, just about everything. I mean, my family is here. My children are in school here. I've had very pleasant time here in terms of career. It's home, but it's more than that. I think it's a town that I would like even if I didn't live here, simply because I respect and admire the fact that Peorians and Peoria have always had the ability to find what they need some way. I don't know how we do it over and over again, but somehow we do. And I think the fact that we have so many resources here, we have a beautiful museum, we have the largest planetarium south of Chicago, the largest planetarium in the state. We have beautiful art exhibits that come here. We have our own symphony, chorus, ballet, opera, 2 community theaters, a professional theater. I mean, you can go on and on and on. That doesn't happen by chance.
all of that is wonderful and all of that is beautiful, but there are a number of people out there, I'll wager right now, who are out of work and hungry and don't know where their next paycheck is, and they can't afford Lakeview, and they can't afford the symphony or the beautiful things in this community.
I think that's a misstatement. I think there are a lot of things in this community that are just here, don't have to be afforded. I mean, you can go to Lakeview without even paying anything. You can enjoy our parks without paying a thing.
Beautiful parks.
Beautiful parks. And you can enjoy just the natural environment around here without paying anything.
So maybe,
the public libraries.
So maybe if we all re-examine our sense of loyalty to Peoria, we'll look for the beauty.
Or loyalty
we'll want to make it better.
Loyalty to anything. I feel strongly that it's so easy to say, this is the way things are, and gosh darn it, poor me, and I just can't help it, and there's nothing I can do about it. But there's always something that can be done, and usually if you do that one something you can grasp at, other things happen also.
I think one of the problems, Celeste, in this day in which we live is the fact that we see these people circling above the earth in these airships, and there's a perspective one gets then that this whole world is ours, and so we get out of that life real quickly that says we are home at home, meaning Peoria. But the reality is that the individual cannot really live in that whole environment. They have to come back to something that is sized for them. And that's a Peoria.
Okay. There are a couple other things I want to touch on before we have to go, and one of them is, do you think in order for people to buy here first, to try here first, that you're asking people to make some kind of sacrifice, however big or small? I'm not talking about degrees of sacrifice. Is there a sacrifice that maybe somebody along the way is going to have to make for a while?
I really don't think so. I think it's a matter of simply taking advantage of the resources that are at hand. I think we have not been, perhaps we haven't promoted ourselves enough. I'm speaking of we as being the retail community and the businesses, and I think consumers haven't looked for the things that are here. It's very easy to look at a catalog, pick something out, send off your order, and not realize that by the time you pay all the shipping costs, you paid more for the item than you would if you bought it here in Peoria.
Gene, how would you respond to that question?
Well, I think that there is a tremendous reservoir of knowledge, a tremendous reservoir of materials, products, and things here, and I think we ought to use them. And getting back to this point, maybe
sacrifice.
Not
Do we
really,
need to?
We don't need to sacrifice. I think that we can feel it as an obligation, first of all.
Okay, maybe I'm saying sacrifice in a way that neither of you are understanding, or maybe I'm taking this whole thing a step further than you are. Sacrifice to me means giving up something else to do something instead, in this case. Instead of going to Oakbrook shopping, maybe I'll make a conscious effort to shop here in Peoria.
Conscious effort is a good word, but why is that a sacrifice? Not to drive 5 hours and not to pay extra
Because
taxes?
if that's a fun experience to me and it's something I enjoy, giving it up is a sacrifice. Maybe it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to do.
And that's
but
great.
Are you asking people to do that is what I'm saying.
I'm asking people to examine what's in their own best interests, and perhaps it wouldn't be a sacrifice. Perhaps it would be just as enjoyable for you to shop here in Peoria if you knew where to go and what to find.
And that says something for that we in Peoria have to let others know that we're here to do business, and that we want to show them that our service or our product is better, hopefully better than what you go. I don't think you should sacrifice at all a quality or a price or anything else. I think that we in Peoria have to be right on top, doing our act, or selling our product, and it has to be a good one.
All right. Thank you both for joining us on Center Stage tonight. I've enjoyed talking to both of you. I hope those of you who have been watching and asking yourself some of these same questions have come up with some answers. Becky Littlefield from the Chamber of Commerce and Gene Swager from Philip Swager, thank you both very much for joining us tonight. I'm Celeste Kelley, and that's it for Center Stage this week. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.